So this is it. We're at the end, or almost at the end, of our journey together. Time flies. It's amazing that this is to me at least, that this is the 21st episode. And we've had a great time along the way, but we're going to finish strongly. So what we'll be doing in this session is following on from what we talked about last time and covering something else which is really important for whatever you do online in the future. So let's just switch over to the presentation here, which hopefully I should be able to do like this. And this is what we saw in the last session, essentially. Just saying this is the last session of Build a Profitable Online Business for all the reasons that I talked about last time. I'm not going to recap on those. But I would like to underline the Facebook group, which will live on long after this course, has finished. And that's the place. It's completely free to join. There's no downside from joining. There is an approval process just because we all want to keep spammers out and so on, keep it nice and clean and focused. But if you just go to the link in the description, hit Facebook, then you click join group, and then you will get approved sometime after that, hopefully fairly quickly. If you've got any questions, that's the place. I will be doing further content updates, including some live streams there. In fact, tomorrow on Friday, I'll be live streaming into the group, so that could be a chance to have a bit of a debrief on the course. And I'll also share with you, I've got another one or two little things that I want to put forward to you. And these are not long live streams like we've been doing, half an hour or 40 minutes here on YouTube with a kind of presentation. It's much more formal. In the Facebook group, it's much more informal and they're much shorter. So basically, by the time you've drunk half a cup of coffee, if that, you'll be able to walk away with a great new insight or a shortcut or a new technique that you can use, and which will make your life a lot easier and save you time and hassle. So it's all upside, and that is continuing. So this is kind of the end of this section, if you like, for the reasons we gave last time, but please do join us in the Facebook group. Now, let's get on to what we're going to talk about today. And this is part 2 of what I'd do if I had to start from scratch. So last time, in the previous session, we outlined a 3-step action plan, which looked like this. And we talked about each of these steps in detail, but also referenced other episodes in this course where we go into these topics in a much more detail. So on the resource page, which I've put up on the screen, but it's also, if you're here on YouTube, then it's in the link below as well. Just gainhighground.com/BAPOB, Build a Profitable Online Business. If you just go there, you've got all of those sessions. You can go back and recap. There are also downloads with resources and tools. You can download the slides. There's a lot of transcriptions of the sessions if you're interested in that. And there's no email required or any password or any cost or anything like that. It's all up there on a public access page that you can go back to again and again. So that's not getting deleted. It's not going anywhere. And all of that is there. So I hope you found last time a useful way of recapping basically on the course. Rather than just do a boring summary, I wanted to sort of put it into an actual plan and then reference the stuff that we did before. And it feels good creating a plan. Everybody loves a plan, and creating a business plan is always exciting. But it's not enough. That is, it's not enough to have success in the future. So in this session, we're going to look at why that's the case and what we can do about it. So let's take a look at the journey. Whatever project you're doing, we're all working on different things. I've got a couple of things right now that I'm working on two sort of quite big projects. Yours will be different, somebody else will be slightly different to that, and so on. But whatever you're doing, essentially you're going on a journey. And let's visualize that with this road. So you can see where we are right now. And let's say the desired outcome, the result we want to achieve, or the set of results we want to achieve, is somewhere right over there in the distance, in those hills, in those mountains in the distance. That's where our pot of gold is, all right, metaphorically. And to get there, obviously, we've got to go down the road. Now, when you start out and you build that plan like we did last time, it all looks really great and exciting, and you can sort of visualize the journey, and you're really pumped up. Of course, though, we all know that along the way, there'll be various little glitches and challenges and possibly roadblocks. So when we start the journey, it's all fine, but pretty quickly you'll get something that comes up. So maybe it will be that you don't know how to do something. That is the time to be resourceful. So you can use Google, YouTube, you can do a training course, you can hire in somebody on a consulting basis, buy an hour's consulting or something to solve that problem that you're trying to work on. I do all of those things and more. And that's called being resourceful. So all these things have solutions. That's quite a simple one, isn't it? All right. If you don't know how to do something, well, it's pretty obvious. You've got to figure it out. And there's different ways of doing that. So you get over that hurdle. It's not too bad. But then you try something and it didn't work. A bit further down the road. And that can be quite an experience. If you haven't got the right foundational mindset, and it's not robust, and you're not built your plan, your business plan, on solid foundations mentally, then that can rock the boat a bit if something doesn't work out. It's inevitable, and it always happens all the time, right? And it's beautiful if you can just get used to that and just not have it affect you at all. All right, you can make so much more progress and really speed down the road much quicker. But still, if you're not in the right place up here, then that could rock the boat quite a lot. Now, moving on, we make a bit more progress. Well, then comes a distraction. Maybe this is a webinar you see online, or an ad when you're going around the internet, or something else, not even related to your business has distracted you. We've all been there. And that can throw you off course as well. Temporarily, sometimes even permanently, and you don't make any further progress down the road. What else? Well, let's say we get past the distraction. We go, no, we're going to stay on track here. We're going to carry on. You get a bit further down, and then you get a loss of enthusiasm. Now, we've all had this as well, where projects seem exciting for a while, and then suddenly you just wake up one day and everything just feels a little bit grayer. And you can't quite work out why it's changed. And sometimes you can't even remember why you were excited and enthused to begin with. So it's a mystery, right? But this is another experience that you can have on the road towards those mountains at the end, where your results and outcome is. But that's not all. So you could have a personal issue. Now, this could be a minor health issue, like a cold or something else that puts you out for a few days or a couple of weeks, or it could be slightly more serious. It might not be to do with your health, it might be to do with somebody else, or a certain situation in your family or friends, or your social kind of, whatever you call it, bubble or whatever. So there's all sorts of personal issues, right? It could be the car's broken down, or anything, right? Something else which has got in the way. And even if things go well, you can end up having low productivity, or even your productivity collapsing because you're just too tired. We have this all the time. I mentioned it on one of the other sessions previously, that I got tired, right? And that's when you have to have a break to reboot and refresh. So there's all these kind of challenges down this road which you don't see. You do not see these when you're starting out. So that is what we're talking about today. This is the essence of it. And like with all of these episodes, you can take the advice and you can mould it and change it and add bits in and craft it and make it your own, take it on board. Or you can go, no, I don't, it's not for me, I don't want to do that. That's fine. But I think from experience, you probably know that this is what any road looks like. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do in life. These issues, they just keep coming up, don't they? Every few hundred yards, you're going to get something. So being able to steady the ship and just cruise down and take these in your stride, that's where we want to be. Because if you can't do that, if you haven't got that up here, it doesn't matter really how good your business plan is that we covered last time. It's not going to follow through, right? And this is why people start and they stop. They never get things done. They keep coming back to things periodically, but never actually finishing them, and all sorts of other things. All right. Again, we've all been there. So what we've got is another 3-step plan. But this one's different to the one that we discussed in the previous episode. The first step of this is regular and consistent work schedule. Now this possibly might win the prize for the most boring slide in the whole course. Of all 21 episodes, all 21 sessions, this might be the one that's the most boring. But I'm not here to just show you exciting stuff or things that you want to hear. I just want to show you what's real and what's important. And sometimes those things can seem a little bit dull on the outside. This is absolutely crucial, right? Because random work regimes are hopeless. If you just think, I'm doing this stuff, I've got a bit of time, I might do a couple of hours this afternoon, a bit busy tomorrow, but Saturday morning might be good, so I'll do a bit of time there. Then you leave it a few days and so on. You never get anything done. You can't get stuff done there. You need a regular and consistent work schedule to allow you to compound your efforts. Now, if you know anything about finance or investment, one of the cornerstones, really, concepts in it is compound interest. And this concept, you can work that out in a spreadsheet and mathematically, but the concept is really important for how you work as well, because the idea is that you get small cumulative actions on a regular, consistent basis in your work schedule. And the effect of that isn't that you go up in a linear way, in a straight line. It's much more of an upward curve, some kind of exponential function. That's what happens. Because each individual step compounds on its own. And my attitude sort of mentally to this is, I always say to myself, I don't really care how long things take, how much work's involved, when I get the result. As long as every day I've made a step forward from the previous day, I'm happy. That's the base case scenario. Now, obviously, I want to make that step as big as possible and all the rest of it. But that just constant progress, that's what it's about, because that's where you get that cumulative build. So practically, what do you need to do here? You need to figure out when, how often, and where. And it also needs to be sustainable. So don't fall into the trap like many people do, is like get really excited, 7-day wonder, and they go hell for leather on the project and just burn out. Like after 10 days, they just can't keep it up. You find this in all sorts of fields. Like people go to the gym, don't they? I always remember I went to the gym for years when I lived in London, and you'd always get that flow in after Christmas, New Year's resolution, and they're all gone by Easter, all of them, until the next year. That's no good, and it won't do you any good for your health either. You've wasted your time and your money, really. So much better to do less but keep it up consistently and just do it relentlessly. So that's a careful balance. If in doubt, I say do less. If in doubt, do less. You can always turn the dial up a little bit if you want to later. I often tell the story about years ago. I used to be a guitar teacher. I used to do private tuition for guitar. And probably the youngest student I had was probably like 6 years old. The oldest student, I don't know, maybe 70, 80 perhaps even. And lots in between. But right across the age group, the people who did the best were the ones who just did a little bit of practice regularly, like even 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and they did that like 5 days a week. If you add that up, it's not a lot of time, but that beats doing all day practice once a week. And that's just how our brains work. You need to, with an instrument, you need to just train your fingers to get that finger memory. What's happening is new neural pathways are developing in your mind. And the more you etch those out, the more ingrained they get, and you've got a new skill. So when you play something on the guitar or the piano or whatever, you don't have to think. Those players aren't thinking my, second finger needs to go down here now or whatever. It just happens because we've developed our mind. And so if you realise that, then you understand how powerful consistent work is. So make some space in the time that you've got available. We've all only got 24 hours. So pick some time that works. And you can play around with that as well. You don't have to get it right first time. Try this, try that, see what you can do. But don't be a scatterer. Don't scatter your work efforts around and just be inconsistent. Get on a regular schedule. So let's move on to step 2. Let me know in the comments, is this making sense so far? Just want to check in with you, make sure everyone's still awake. I'm well practiced at distraction, unfortunately, Tom says. Yeah, it's easy to, you're not the only one. It happens to everyone. Yeah. Oh, yes, says John. Perfectly. Okay, great. All right. Here's step 2, reinforce your foundations. So remember, all the way through this course, in pretty much every single session, in fact, I think it might be 17 sessions out of the 21, we have, at the end, after we've gone through all the online strategies and tactics and product creation and traffic methods and all that business stuff, we've then looked at the foundation, which is the mental mindset, essentially. And here is a snapshot of all of those things that we talked about. Now, how many of these right now do you remember? You might remember a few looking at the slides, but how many are you actually doing day in, day out? Have you found any others that we didn't talk about that you could bring in? Have you tried some of these and found they maybe don't work for you, so you can get rid of them? Have you adjusted any? That is what it takes. That's what you need to do. Because you can watch the YouTube video, I could explain it and everything, but it only becomes useful when you actually live it, in effect. So this is what we mean by reinforcing your foundations. It's really important to live this stuff and practice it and just implement it. There's lots of little techniques that we explain. So some of them are, for example, you might remember ones where we said that you can get better at this by being aware, which is the first level of it, and then secondly, just making small micro commitments, things like that. So are you doing that? Those are the things. Now, the great news is it doesn't take a lot of time. You don't need any time set aside really for this in your schedule. You don't have to say, oh, for 10 minutes now I'm going to do reinforcing my foundations. But it doesn't work like that, I don't think. You just need to remind yourself of these things and actually implement them as you're making choices and decisions every day. So instead of like you used to choose A, now you might go, oh, do you know what? I'm going to choose B this time and see what happens and play around with it. And that's where you'll become more familiar with it. And it's like those neural pathways, they'll start to be etched out and to be developed. And this is where you'll start to get the benefit. So this is not just about knowledge, it's about actually practicing it and implementing it. So if you can start to reinforce your foundations all the time, when you're setting off on that road that we saw, you're going to be every single, I don't care what the obstacle is, you're going to be better able to deal with it. You'll get less stressed, less frustration, you'll feel happier overall, and you'll go faster down that road. That's the effect of this. It doesn't cost you any money. You don't need a specific slot in your calendar, but you do need to be aware of it and think about it every day. The other thing is that what I've shared with you here are just things that work for me. These are not off-the-shelf ideas that I've seen and thought, oh, that would be good for the course, and so I just fed it through. These are things that I've learned and been aware of and sort of collected up over time, and I've found to be effective myself. So there are things missing that I haven't included because I don't find them useful. So like stuff like law of attraction, for example, right? That to me, doesn't make sense really. But other techniques, perhaps similar to that, they do work for me. So what I've done is picked out my own individual ingredients and then created my own recipe that works for me. But that's only good for me, and you will need your own recipe with your own ingredients. So take these, mold them, adjust them, tune them up, create your own recipe with these ingredients. And that's part of reinforcing your foundations as well. That is part of the process. So, let's move on to number 3. Now this is hard to explain, so I'll do my best. And if we spent too long on this, I'd get way out of my depth, because my expertise is in the online stuff with this, really the roadmaps and everything we've covered up through the course, right? It's not in, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a guru, personal development person or anything. These are just tools for me to allow me to get more success, be happier, have less frustrations. That's why I use them, right? There's no other reason. It's not for fun, they're great, but they're there for a reason. So this is a little bit subtle. So think about this. We all have an identity, and in that identity it's made up of a lot of self-defining beliefs. So when people say things like, oh, I'm so unlucky, or I'm no good at X, or I've never been any good at Y, these are things that they've accepted that are part of their identity, that they live with every day, and that is major part of what defines them and what they do and the decisions they make and the choices they make. So what you can do is you can start to turn the tables on this, because as you can imagine, those self-defining beliefs often have come from negative experiences, and it could be that you've had a knee-jerk reaction, consciously or unconsciously, to stop that negative experience happening again, right? And that's just tweaked your identity a little bit, which might be great in the short term, but long term it might not be so good. So thinking about your identity, what you're made up of, your own beliefs, that really defines your reality, or a major part of your reality, and what you perceive the world to be, and what you perceive you can do. So it's very powerful to know what you're for and what your identity is. So part of my identity that I have changed, that I didn't have to start with, is that with regard to this business, is that this is what I do. This is what I do, right? So it doesn't matter if I feel I don't want to go to work one day, or I'm like, not sure about this project, or you're not feeling that. It doesn't matter. This is what I do. It's become an identity, or part of my identity. And that's very powerful because it gives you strong driving force compared to if you're just playing around with stuff. And I've met so many people over the years going, I'll give it a try for a couple of months, see how it goes. Well, never does it work. Never, because they haven't lent into it. They haven't really implanted it in their core and just become it and just knocked it out. So this is a hard area to explain, but there's a lot of reading you can do on this, on identity. And in a moment, we'll talk about something which will relate to that as well. So here's the truth to finish up with. You can listen to all of this, but many of you will never open the mindset box because you're afraid of what you'll find inside. Throughout your entire life, you've developed a mental framework to protect yourself. This is true whether you've done that consciously or unconsciously. And it's true for you because it's true for everyone. What happens is we have different experiences, and then our thoughts change, sometimes temporarily, but sometimes permanently, to protect us from any of those bad experiences that we've had. And as we just said, sometimes that's good, but in the short term, but sometimes in the long term, it can be really bad. So the prospect of exploring that framework, debugging it, remolding it, is just too frightening for many people. And that's essentially because you end up thinking you have to ask yourself, have I been living a lie? Is all this stuff, all these years I've been believing certain things, and I've developed this mental framework. What happens if it's all wrong? I can't cope with that, So for example, somebody, let's say early in their life, might have had some, let's say, social anxiety, or they just didn't like social gatherings, or they didn't want to be around other people. They found that very unpleasant. Now, in the short term, it might be good for them to stay away from those situations, right? But if that gets ingrained into their identity and their self-defining belief becomes, I'm no good around other people, then they won't go near social gatherings or be with other people for years. So these little experiences, that maybe at school something happened, or later on when you were a teenager, or whatever it was, or in your 20s, these little experiences, particularly if they happen more than once, can really change the cogs, change the gears in your mind, and they become part of your identity. And then 20, 30, 40 years later, you still don't go to the social gatherings, or you still believe that you're no good with other people, or you don't like being around them. So while that on the short term gave you some relief because you didn't have that social anxiety because you weren't around people anymore, over the decades that could be could have a huge cost to that. So you can start to see how these things form just from random events, and how actually it can be quite logical in the short term, but long term it can be very, very harmful. And you probably know people who are like this. If you think about people you know, can you think of people, and you probably wouldn't have a conversation with them, but you just think, God, if you would only just do this, right, you'd be fine, right? But they won't do it, whatever it is, right? They won't drive because I'm no good at driving, I can't drive. All these sort of things, right? Whatever it is, it could be anything. They just have that self-defining belief. They will not do it. And they might be 60 years old, and that has come, the seed of that was sowed when they were 19 or 21, or when something happened after school when they were 8. So the overhang of this is massive, and investigating that, going into that mental framework and looking at it, that can be a frightening thing for a lot of people, and they will not do it. But here's the thing, right? And this is the truth part. The truth is that your past self was a different person, and you don't need to worry about what that person thought or believed. So last week, you were a different form as to you are now. It's effectively a different person. Neuroscience have done some research on this, and they found that particularly with your future self, so you in 5 years or 10 years, it lights up the same part of the brain as when you think about somebody else rather than you. And in effect, you right now you are different people, because your previous self doesn't exist anymore, and the future self doesn't exist either. So you don't need to go regressing back and trawling through all this stuff and worried about opening this Pandora's box. All you need to worry about or be concerned with or focus on is you in the present self. So similarly, your future self is also another person yet to be shaped by the events and thoughts leading up to that point in time. So you next week or next year, you don't know what that's going to be, because it's going to depend on how your mental framework, which is made up of all those defining beliefs and lots of other components, how that changes, how that gets molded, will depend on the events and the choices you make and so on. You can't foresee that. You could guess, it might be accurate, but you don't really know. And effectively, it's another person. It's not the same you as you are right now. The only thing that really matters are the choices you make in the present, because your entire future will be determined by them. So you don't need to worry about if you've been somebody said in the comments like, I've been distracted loads in the past. It doesn't matter, it's gone. And you don't need to be worried about being distracted in the future either. All you need to focus on is what you can focus on. What really matters is right here, right now, like now, and that's gone now, and now. So that's the point when you make a choice, A or B. That's the point when you make a decision. So when you become aware of these things, like the 17 things I've shared with you in the course, and anything else that you like that works for you, and you create your own recipe, that will help you change the way you make those decisions and those choices, and that is the only focus. So don't worry about opening a Pandora's box in the past. Don't worry about fears in the future, because those things don't exist, neither of them. The only thing that's real, the only thing that really exists is you right here, right now, and the choices you make. So there is nothing to fear. Now, that was a bit of a different ending to how you might have expected us to finish this course. But it's very important, and I thought I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't share that with you. But what I would like to say now is a massive thank you, especially to people like Tom and Ian and Roy and Chris, Brian, Martin is on, and many others. I apologise if I've missed your names, who've pretty much, a lot of you guys have attended every single session. I know that. It's on YouTube, so I don't get to see who registers. It's not like a webinar. I don't know who watches on the follow-up or whatever. But anyone who puts in the chat, I can see their name. So thank you very much, first of all, to you guys. Secondly, everyone who's watched on the replay, even some of the sessions, maybe you haven't done the whole course. You can consume what you like. It's up to you. But I hope some of it, or all of it, has been really helpful for you. Now, this is not going to be, I'm sure, the last YouTube live stream that we ever do. I've really enjoyed doing them, actually, and it's been interesting learning about the technology of live streaming and how it all works and so on. But for now, this course is coming to a close. We will be back at some stage, and in the meantime we'll be in the Facebook group as well. So like I said, I will be doing a live stream tomorrow in the Facebook group, and that, like YouTube, it just saves. So if you miss it live, you can just go back and watch it over the weekend or whenever you like, and you can catch up on the live streams I've already done there in the Facebook group. So check the description for that. And that's it. So thank you very much. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I certainly have. And we'll meet again soon. Please like the video. That would be wonderful. And we'll talk soon. Take care for now.